We will talk about brown fat. We have two types of fat in our body. First is white fat and second is brown fat. White fat is major part of our fat. It's around 98% of total body fat, and only 2% is brown fat in most adults. So why is brown fat so important if it's so few? Because it's active. What it means? It means white fat is passive. It does not generate heat. It does not burn calories. Actually, it burns calories but very minimal. And brown fat actively burns calories and generates heat. And this heat warms our body. Especially, it's very prominent among infants because infants have no reflex of shivering, and when they exposure to cold temperature, this brown fat burns actively and generates heat for our body. So brown adipose tissue or brown fat is important. Brown fat contains lots of mitochondria in cells, and this mitochondria generates energy. That's why brown fat has color brown compared to white fat, because it contains mitochondria, and mitochondria contains iron, and iron is the reason why it has brown color. Now let's say what we know from studies. We know from studies that average person burns around 50 to 100 calories per day from brown fats. But if person exposes cold frequently, and if person is lean, and if person is physically active, he or she can burn up to 800 calories from thermogenesis from brown adipose tissue. So person can burn lots of calories from brown adipose tissue. And brown fat can increase person's energy expenditure around 22%. It means person can burn 22% more calories than he or she burns daily. And where is this brown fat located in our body? Here is a CT scan, and we can notice where is distribution of brown fat. It's around the neck, is common distribution, and around our shoulders, and in internal organs like kidneys and liver, and alongside the spine. This is distribution of brown fat. And brown fat is important because we can increase quantity and volume of brown fat, and we can activate it. That's why it's important, because we can affect it, and it's not fixed. If it's fixed, it can burn around only 50 calories per day. But if person physically active, if person lean, he can increase dramatically these burnt calories. And brown fat has two important health benefits. First, it's usually brown fat majorly burns visceral fat. It burns triglycerides from visceral fat. It means that it decreases abdominal obesity. That's why brown fat is important. And as we know, abdominal obesity causes cardiovascular disease. So burning abdominal fat or visceral fat decreases the risk of cardiovascular disease. So brown fat decreases cardiovascular risk. Second important is that Brown fat also burns glucose, not only fats but also burns glucose, and it burns glucose from our blood. Normal cells and other cells usually also burn glucose, but they generate ATP from it, and they store this ATP, and ATP is energy store. But brown fat directly burns glucose and produce heat, so it importantly improves also glucose metabolism and blood glucose level in the blood, because it consumes this glucose ineffectively. It consumes lots of glucose and it improves insulin resistance. So for diabetic persons, it also helpful. For people who has insulin resistance, it's helpful. That's why brown fat is important, because it decreases risk of cardiovascular disease and decreases risk of diabetes and improves insulin resistance. Now let's say, how can we affect levels of brown fat? First is exercise. Exercise can activate and generate volume of brown fat, especially high intensity interval training is important. Also, weight loss is important, because lean people have higher proportion and higher amount of brown fat. Thyroid hormones also increase production of brown fat, and some diabetic medications like metformin also increases brown fat. Also, capsaicin are a compound of chili peppers, and it increases and stimulates also brown fat formation. And now let's say what decreases brown fat. Age. For example, in children we have around 5% of brown adipose tissue from total fat tissue number, and in adults this number is only 2%, sometimes 1%. So age decreases brown adipose tissue. Obesity decreases brown adipose tissue, and high temperature. People who live in high temperature zones and constantly exposure to high temperature, they have less brown adipose tissue. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for your watching. If you like my videos, please thumbs up. If you like my channel, please subscribe. Thank you very much. Bye for now.